things are pretty bad when that happens, and it very easily could complete the journey down to zero. That's why I have been avoiding the banks, because I saw this train wreck coming from a mile away. And another example of the problem that the banks are in is their auto loan. And who do you think has been financing this car buying binge that went on in the United States for 10 years or so? I was watching George Gammon's podcast, and he brought this up and actually gave me the idea to talk about it. So I should credit George. And by the way, I'm going to plug his conference. I am going to be at his conference in Orlando. It's the weekend of April 12th. So I'm going to be down there. He's got some other really good speakers. The bubble there, because when interest rates were at zero, anybody who could fog a mirror could buy a car, right? I mean, there was a lot of money going into the auto market, and that drove auto sales. People could get auto loans for nothing down, no payments, or all kinds of gimmicks. And even if you had really bad credit, right, you're a subprime borrower, low FICO score, you can still get a loan. Right? Nobody really cared. They charge you a little bit higher interest because they want interest, and interest rates are zero. Everybody is starved for yield. But one of the bigger problems that nobody really talks about, I talked about it real time. A is the duration of these auto loans. A lot of these loans were 5, 6, 7-year loans. When I was younger, if you bought a car and you had a loan, it was maybe a 3-year loan. You didn't know it had a 5, 6, 8-year auto loan. When you got a rapidly depreciating asset like a car. But another problem, in addition to these long maturities on these auto loans, what was happening during this car bubble, and I talked about it in real time. I'm not, Monday morning quarterback when it comes to these auto loans. But people would go in with a car that they owned, where they were already underwater on their loan, meaning they owed, let's say, $30,000, and the car was only worth $20,000, right? So you got no equity in your existing car. How are you going to buy a new car? Well, what the car guys were doing is they were rolling that negative equity into the new loan. So they would allow you to take this upside down car and trade it in, and they would just carry that $10,000 deficit and stack it on top of this new loan. So now you're actually borrowing more than the car is worth. Let's say you traded in to a $50,000 car and you bought it with nothing down, and they took the $10,000 you owed on the last car and stuck it on the new loan. So now you're borrowing $60,000 to buy a $50,000 car, and the minute you drive it off the lot, it's worth $40,000. Well, you already owe 60, you're up to pay down 20 grand. Well, as a lot of these loans start going into default, it's going to be huge losses for the lender, right? And so who are the lenders? Well, a lot of them are banks, right? They've been lending out money. And these regional banks are in the most trouble because, as I said, they're seeing a withdrawal of capital, cash. Customers are taking their money out because they don't want to take chances that if their bank fails, it doesn't get a special bailout because it's not politically connected enough or big enough. So people are yanking their money out to play it safe and to put it into these bigger banks. And they want to get interest. These regional banks can't pay enough interest. They can't even compete with the U.S. government interest on treasuries. So they're in a lot of trouble. Their loans are going bad. Their collateral's going down. These are horrible businesses. And the fact that they're falling, again, is a bad sign. Gold closed below 2,000 today. I mean, still above 1990. They can't knock it down. The gold stocks are in a bit of a correction, and maybe the correction will get a little bit bigger. I mean, I bought a little bit more gold stocks myself. I'm very selective now. So if some stocks have corrected a little bit more, I'll buy them. See, the only time the price of the stock matters is when you buy and when you sell. But I know that gold stocks are going to be much higher in the future. Well, I don't have a time machine. I don't have the newspaper from 10 years into the future. But I don't think I need a time machine. This is so obvious that I can see it in advance. And so I'm so convinced that these stocks are going to be much higher in the future. I want them to go down now, even though I already own a bunch, because I'm still earning money. I have to invest it somewhere. I'm not going to spend it all. And so I want to buy more of these stocks. Mainly of my last podcast, I talked a lot about the debt ceiling brinkmanship and all the political theater involved in the debt ceiling. With this increase, we want to just increase the debt ceiling, just a clean bill to increase the debt ceiling, as if that doesn't punish Americans. Who does Biden and the Democrats, who do they think is responsible for repaying all this debt? It's not like Americans avoid being punished if we don't make them pay now, if we let them pay later, because they're going to pay more later. Increasing the debt punishes the American people who are on the hook for repaying that debt. So if we really want to do the American people a solid, we should not raise the debt ceiling. We should reduce the burden of debt that we are placing on them. But Biden and his buddies in the Democratic Party want to pretend that the average American, the middle class, and the people who were getting these government benefits would feel the pain of the reduction in the real purchasing power of whatever money they were receiving from the government, because it wouldn't keep pace with the increase in the cost of living. As I mentioned in my last podcast, given the fact that we have over a $2 trillion annual budget deficit, in order to balance the book so that we stop burdening Americans with even bigger debt, which they have to repay with interest. So obviously, if you have to repay your debt with interest, it's more expensive than just paying for the spending right now. To balance the budget is so big that it can't ever work because of the economic impact and the adverse consequences those higher taxes would actually have on the very thing that you're trying to tax. So most of it is going to have to come from spending cuts, but real spending cuts. But the Democrats won't even sign on to these tiny spending cuts that the Republicans are proposing. Biden and the Democrats are saying these are draconian, these are heartless, this is going to destroy America, we're not going to vote for this. Instead, we'd rather destroy America with debt rather than destroy them with spending cuts.